them out, one is longer than the other. Okay? They're interchangeably electrically. There's no difference. The only difference is that one is a little longer than the other. Okay? So be sure to put those in right. It won't hurt if you get them mixed up, and they'll reach to either side, but the short one goes on the left and the long one goes on the right. Now you'll recognize this from our earlier troubleshooting of the controller. This is what I use to troubleshoot the controller. I have a couple of junk units that I've been able to take parts off of, so I keep this handy, and I use that to help troubleshoot the controller with. Whether you have the resources to do that or not, it's up to you, but I went ahead and got one unit that was pretty well trashed, and I used that to troubleshoot with. So I'm going to put these back in real quick. Okay, cover goes back on by hinging to the top, going to the bottom, replacing the two screws. Sometimes those are dirty enough that they need to be washed. They need to be washed off. Okay, so screw that back on. And screw the other back on. Okay, there we go. Now, the way that the power and reset comes out is there's a screw here and a screw here, and they just kind of lift out. You have to kind of tilt it and lift as you pull it out. And these get pretty dirty sometimes. Be careful when you wash them off not to get a lot of water in the switch itself. What I usually do is I take it apart. I have one over here that I use for troubleshooting that I've taken out of another one, the same one that I got that controller socket out of. And what I usually do is I just pretend this was water. I dip it in about like that and then just wash it off with a towel, paper towel or something, toothbrush. Get that all clean and avoid getting water up inside these. It's just not a good idea. Okay? So now that that bottom is out, I usually set that aside for later assembly. I leave it like that. Again, if it needs to be cleaned, remove all these and you can immerse it in the same water that you wash the top with and clean the top and the bottom. These stickers are metallized stickers and they won't come off even if they get wet, unlike some others that are paperized. So don't worry about these stickers coming off. Take note of the serial number on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to set that down. So what that leaves us with is the RF shield for the bottom, and now this just lifts right off. It's a little tricky getting it back on again because you have to make sure that this bottom connector is inside the opening. So it slides on, again pulls off. Again, I'll set this to the side and we'll use that later. Now, the cartridge assembly slides forward and off. Okay? You'll notice that once you put it back on, you need to be careful that this little lip is properly seated right. If it's not over the motherboard, if it's like this, then you won't get it correct, and when you screw it down, it'll cause this to bend and this won't index properly. Okay? These things, when you push down, it should hold down, and then when you let go, it should push down again, it should come up. And sometimes I've had to work on the mechanism in here to fix them. You'll have to kind of experiment with that and find out what's the best for you on repairing those. But usually these can be immersed in water if they're dirty and cleaned up. Again, with a toothbrush or something to that effect. Set that aside. Okay, so what that leaves us with now is the main circuit board, okay, and the 72-pin connector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the 72-pin connector off. Now note that the 72-pin connector goes on the solder side, not this side. And it's easy. It will go on this way, but it won't work. Okay? So when you need to, put it on this side. When you need to put it back. Now, it is okay at this point to go ahead and insert a cartridge for test purposes. However, that's why you need this on-off switch. Hook it over here, like this. And if you're going to play a game, you'll need a controller, one of those controller things to hook on. Then hook the coax cable here and the power cable here, and you should be able to turn it on and get a solid red light, meaning that it's making proper connection here. Turn on your television and see that everything works fine. If it doesn't work fine, then usually there's something associated, obviously, with what's left. Okay, at this point there are three major problems that occur with, if a problem exists, there are three major problems that will probably solve 95% of all your troubles. Again, to this point we've troubleshot the AC adapter, the RF switch, and the controller units, and the game. So we know that it's not there, so we know that it's in here, right? So what you want to do is turn it on, and if it still flashes at this point, the biggest problem you'll encounter is the 72-pin connector. The 72-pin connector, what happens is these contacts, the contacts in here, get dirty or they oxidize, but the biggest problem that occurs is they recede. They lose their spring and they move back away from the circuit board. There are circuit boards that you'll get in, or units that you'll get in, that no matter how good you clean them, you'll never, ever, ever get them to work. So you have to either get a new one or rebuild them, and I'll go through the rebuilding process in just a moment. To clean them, first of all, as I showed you before, just insert the little wand and move it up and down and back and forth. The top portion you have to be very careful of, because you can grab the side of one of the fingers and bend it if you're too aggressive. The bottom part, though, you don't have to worry about it. What I usually do is I just insert it and move it back and forth. I insert it at an angle so that the point is in, and that gives me, going this direction, an edge, and going back this direction, an edge to move smoothly across. So I clean the bottom portion of the connector with one of these cleaning wands, and you can see by the dirt on this one how dirty this one was. Now the top one, you usually can look at it and tell if there's any oxidation. It usually shows up in the way of a green little corrosion on some of the contacts. If there's a lot of that, you may want to get something like a straight jeweler's screwdriver and move it back and forth and scrape that off. Okay? The next thing you want to do is rebuild the top portion of this connector. And I will show you in just a moment. I'll zoom in and we'll do a step-by-step. I'll take you through how to rebuild one of these connectors. And that's where you're really going to make your money. Without having to pay the $24 for a new one of these. This, incidentally, is a patented item. Nintendo has a patent on this. So I've tried sourcing this out of Korea, out of Taiwan, out of China, out of Japan. You can't get it anywhere. All my suppliers come back and tell me that this is a patented item. So you can't get that. So the choice is you either have to go to Nintendo and pay the exorbitant price of $20 for this thing, $25, or get it on the black market somehow and pay a portion of that, which some of you are doing now, or you can rebuild it. And the rebuilding takes some time. Once you get good at it, you can rebuild one in maybe 10 minutes. About 10 minutes it takes. So I'm going to set that aside, and we'll rebuild one here in just a moment. The other two major problems that you'll encounter are, remember when I showed you when you turn this on, if the screen doesn't definitely change from a snowy to a real strong, solid TV screen, then usually you've got a problem in the somewhere in the RF portion of your control box, your RF modulator here. If you've checked out and made sure that the cable is okay, the next most common failure occurs in the RF modulator itself. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the bottom cover of the RF modulator. If you look in here, right at this point, there is a wire that is soldered from that spot that must go up and turn at an angle and be connected to the very center of this RF RCA jack. What happens is over a period of time, the mechanical connection on the outside of this barrel of this